Welcome to the conclusion of rereading Stuff We've Read's It's a Wonderful Life. In part one, I argued that the yearly rebroadcast of this movie turns it into something else. In part two, I highlighted a deficiency in the film's presentation of George Bailey. Even though he is the main character, there's a complete absence of any mediating force connecting him to his world. And as the modern day proverb goes, that's a bug that became a feature. Part three was when I tried, probably failed, to outline when it is that, as a human, I'm free to choose to engage, and when it is that my freedom is reduced to rejection. The I know not nor care not what, but I'll take that unknown before I become like them over there kind of rejection. Now it's time to pinpoint exactly what it means for someone to assiduously abstain from ever welcoming the desires of some other to become his own. But before we do, here is a trigger warning. We're going to look at the protagonist's desire to have never been, and we will outline a very particular form of suicidal ideation. It could be stressful to listen to, and frankly, there is not a lot in this video that isn't at least implicitly contained in the first three parts of the series. I considered not bothering with this last part at all. But if I'd stopped short of what I have to say next, well, I was afraid. I was afraid a silence could convey some special importance to death by suicide that it decidedly does not merit. So we'll proceed. Up until that moment that Uncle Billy loses $8,000, George Bailey had had a life full of run-of-the-mill desirables. A nice enough job, working with family, steady salary, a wife and kids, a fixer-upper house, and more than a modicum of respect from his community. Adult George Bailey had achieved the kinds of things an average fellow should want to achieve. But he didn't want to want what average people want. He wanted more. We should notice this desire for more is quite hazy. And if we catch sight of its origin anywhere in the film, it's not from some other character modeling a desire for more. No. The greatness to be had by George Bailey and the great big out there is circumscribed within a single rejection. Not Bedford Falls. And that's why he couldn't start a real dialogue with Mary Hatch that night in her living room we talked about in part two. She had just freely chosen Bedford Falls. That's not a rejection. And so, according to George's way of thinking, what could she possibly know about becoming great? And here let me ever so slightly misquote our hero. Back to our hero. Say, brainless, don't you know where becoming comes from? So Uncle Billy's mishap, along with the conveniently villainous Mr. Potter, well, it threatens to take it all away. The building loan will go bust. George will be jailed for embezzlement. But keep in mind, this is only ever a threat. A credible one. But there's no story here of a man imprisoned. He only faces a threat, and it's only the threat of losing those run-of-the-mill desirables. And those are things that he only tolerated wanting. If anything, they were a stand-in for the amorphous big-time desirables he'd always wanted to go after, but never did. This is crucial to see, I think. He's not facing the loss of any big-time stuff, just the stand-in stuff. So it's not the magnitude that, well, it is the magnitude, but it's the opposite of what you might think. You see, the threat has put George's everything into one pile, and now it's painfully obvious just how far the everything he has is from the everything he's always wanted. So magnitude, yes. Immensity? No. It's how piddly it all ends up being. That gets the spotlight without any one thing actually being taken. It's the conspicuous triviality of it all. That leads him to suicidal ideation. You see, when you have a stable model whose desires you embrace as your own with clear-eyed recognition of who is guiding whom, then the loss of objects may be a setback, but it won't rob you of your sense of self. There's always a dust yourself off, or try again, or no one said it would be fun, or get her done. Okay, I am no Robin Williams, nor was meant to be, just an attendant lord trying to show that with a stable model, all you need is a platitude. Any old one will do, and you can get through most messes. But if your model is one you merely tolerate resentfully, that's not stable. The most precise way to put it is to say that your sense of self rests in your capacity to reject your mediator. Whether you act in that capacity is not important. Just believe yourself to be so capable of declaring your independence, and you'll believe yourself to be free. But it's extremely precarious. As George Bailey shows us, the stand-in desirables that you can get rid of, they don't even need to be taken from you in order for you to be cast into some serious pits of despair. Because once they are credibly threatened, you can no longer feign the capacity to reject your desire for them. I could do without this. Oh, I could definitely do without that. Yeah, I could do just fine without any of this. Oh, you're going to take that one? Sure, yeah. Yeah, I take the rest of it too. Okay, we heard you. But guess what? All the stuff you talk about not needing, well, we're about to take it. Yeah, all of it. Ain't much here, is there? Well, you don't got to worry about it no more. So go ahead. Tell us. Yeah, I want to hear you say it. What exactly are you going to do now? You see, if you no longer have standing from which you can pretend you might reject your mediator someday, and you cannot bring yourself to welcome any other mediator as one who benefits your becoming, then all avenues to selfhood have been cut off. For such a troubled soul, the desire to have never been born, it has the makings of making sense. And on the minuscule chance that this would ever be heard by a person who might need to hear it, let me just say, if this tortured and spasmodic form of sense-making has your mind running through hypotheticals, please talk to someone. You could talk to a loved one, but it might do you some good to talk to a stranger. Either way, if it's worth thinking about, it's worth talking about. And that's just true. If it's worth you thinking about it, okay, then it's worth you talking about it. And on a lighter note, much lighter note, this truism about thinking and talking, it goes for movies too. If you watched the complete 4-part video series here and don't yet think it's been a waste of your time, well, you must like thinking your way through a movie using mimetic analyses as footholds to climb outwards toward new perspectives. And if it's worth thinking about, it's worth talking about. You should join Mimesis at the Movies sometime. It's a live, open to all video teleconferenced conversation, meeting under the auspices of Theology and Peace. Yes, theology and peace. You can put up with those two things for like 90 minutes tops. Come join us on the first Thursday of the month. Well, with some people out there on Earth, it'll be Friday morning.